excited to put this together for the last 2 months. So first of all, a special thank you goes out to Nedbank, which has kindly sponsored all the box that you have in front of you. Please do write down some questions for the Q&A at the end, or you're going to ask these guys whatever you'd like. And a special thank you also goes out to Chandra as well, who has helped host and launch this. Tonight is about building at the very earliest stage, before everything looks polished, before anyone has a big team, and before anyone has all the answers. My name is Massimo, and I'll be hosting tonight alongside Percy.
I'm Percy. I spend a lot of time talking to interesting people from the Isle of Man and further afield. And today, with our lovely guest here, it looks like we'll be doing just that. Hopefully you guys are here to listen, learn and take in as much as possible, but also ask questions where necessary, because I'll be doing exactly the same.
So tonight is about 3 things. Number 1 is you don't have to wait until everything's perfect to make a start. Number 2 is you can think bigger than your current environment. And number 3 is starting young is the advantage.
Before we get into it, could we have a quick show of hands? Who here is still in education?
Nice.
Lovely. Who here is still working full-time or working full-time? Hopefully. Good.
And who here is just curious? And who here is currently working on an idea that they haven't really told the world yet? Nice.
Ooh, lovely.
Very exciting.
So tonight we're going to have a fireside chat conversation all about building a pre-seed startup. Now before we get into what that is, we are talking from the perspectives of founders, investors and community leaders as well. So could each of you please introduce yourself and say either what you're building or what you have worked on? Starting from Don.
Yeah, I'm Don. I've been in Web3. We raised 13 million to build an earn app on arbitrary assets, arbitrary on-chain assets, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
And we built a lottery betting company in 2008, and I did this after having worked for Deloitte for 17 years, but the island is a big hub for entrepreneurs, and I discovered much later in my career that that's something you could do, set up a business. We grew it from 3 persons to 50 plus, and I exited in 2016, and now work as an independent non-executive director for lots of different companies across many different jurisdictions and businesses.
Nice.
Very good. So I'm Jonny Quirk. I have been, I'm originally born and bred in the Isle of Man. I've been living in Manchester now for 20 years. I really got the startup bug when I first moved over there, and I've worked for startups like Yelp, Deliveroo, WeWork. I founded a couple of startups, I've raised angel investment. I've also run accelerator programs and incubators. So currently right now I run a consultancy where I coach founders on how to grow their businesses, how to raise investment, how to build community programs. Hopefully we'll go a little bit more into it later on, that community isn't just balloons and stuff like that. It's about customer relationships, it's about growth, it's about cost per acquisition, all this great stuff. Right now, we're literally just launching a brand new platform called DoSomethingElse.AI. It all comes around the whole, I guess, conversation. AI is going to be very disruptive for jobs and careers and lives. And we're trying to start a conversation on this by showing people potentially what their life and future might look like in the coming years ahead. Pathways about how they could retrain, how they could reskill, and maybe just kind of like get really good work and life alignment. So, sorry for taking all that time, but that's what I do.
Over to you, Josh.
Hey, I'm Josh, venture-backed founder. Grew up on the Isle of Man, work in the UK primarily now. Raised over just under $500,000 in the last year, and yeah, super young. I don't maybe I don't look young, but
Well, like 10?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah, 21. Finished university last year, and just always had the bug to building cool stuff and working with cool people. So yeah, that's a bit me.
So, Don, to get into this, could you briefly explain what actually is a pre-seed startup, and what is this stage usually what is the stereotypes around this stage?
Yeah, I mean, usually there's a bunch of things. You could be very scrappy, you could not know anything that you're building, you could be entirely just reacting to people in your network. You could be funded depending on the comps and the industry that you're in. You might have unnecessary amounts of confusion at that point. Really, a pre-seed startup is really any kind of semi-ish business with funding that don't really know what they're doing and have a lot of risk.
Guys, would everybody else say the same thing, or does anybody have a different take on what they'd say a pre-seed startup is?
I definitely like nailed down the fact that you don't need to know what you're doing. Like, you know, just having the cash just means that people believe in you, and then after that it's just how many mistakes can you make as fast as possible to realise then which way to go, you know, whatever sticks, and then just accelerate on that until that doesn't work, and then find another one again and again and again and again. So.
But it all starts with solving a problem. So, as the first-time founder, you know, you want to try and understand where do the good ideas come from. You know, you don't have endless money, you don't have a big team, perfect information. So, Josh, Johnny, did you guys first start out with either something with domain knowledge or something that you really loved, or was it a different cause for you?
You give us.
Okay, cool. Right, no pressure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's changed a couple of times. I can maybe use the two startups that I found as an example from there. So I think the first startup I founded was a business called Beer Adventures. You know, I like beer and I like going on adventures, so it kind of made a lot of sense to me. And really, from this point, I took something which was old school, old fashioned, which was beer tours. You know, brewery tours were big, beer tours around the world. Tourism was, you know, big until, you know, 7 or 8 years ago when I founded it. And I thought, I can do this better. I can use technology, I can make it app-led, I can do that. So I felt like there was a built-in kind of audience for this already. People were spending money on this. I just thought I could make it more efficient. So we might get a bit more into this later on in terms of product market fit, but you know, once I could start putting out lead magnets into the world, once I could start talking to those kind of people who I knew would potentially be my customer, I could have the conversations with them and hopefully refine the product down a little bit later. This time, don't worry, Josh, I'll get a chance to it in a second. It's like, you know, we are really starting by putting 2 lead magnets out there in the world, which is a free AI risk checker, and we're creating roadmaps where potentially people might want to retrain into a certain career. That's filling up our bucket full of emails and names and giving us these signals about who might be that perfect customer might be. But basically, from that point of view, that gives us then loads more data to dig into in the future as well. We don't have domain authority to answer your question on that, but we know that it's a very interesting topic right now, conversation. Google Trends are off the charts, all of this sort of stuff. So we're digging into that right now and seeing it as a massive trend. And this is kind of how we see potentially how we can help as well.
So what about you, Josh? Was it more kind of
PTSD.
Domain authority, you know, Ahrefs.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Sponsored rel, or if it's not, whatever. So yeah, I think domain knowledge is an interesting thing. So did I have domain knowledge when I started building, like, we're building like a price comparison tool basically. It's like a Skyscanner money supermarket type thing, but for tradable in-game assets. So you basically find all the different tradable in-game assets you want to find, and then we show you where to buy it basically as fast as possible at the best deal. But did I have domain knowledge and understanding how to build one of them? No. You know, you're technically building what Skyscanner has done for flights. Did I have domain knowledge in that? Absolutely not. But did I have the passion and understanding of the community of what that should look like? Yes. So in a roundabout way, yes and no.
So from an investor's perspective, Jennifer, you know, one of the things I think as a first-time founder is it's a very different mission than when you've exited or when you've set up multiple companies before. So from a first-time founder's perspective, what do you look for before there's revenue and proof of traction?
I look at the person and his idea, and many interesting people who are brilliantly minded might have an idea, but they don't put it on paper, they don't have the detail, so they might not have the numbers that amazingly sometimes the numbers just don't stack up and it's not profitable. But then also they need to have time, so some people don't realize how much time it takes to get something going. So if that person is overcommitted and wants to do multiple things all at the same time, that's never going to work because you'll run out of money. But then I also look for alignment of culture, because we're all a little bit different in this room, you know, a huge mix of different personalities, and it's not going to work if maybe your vision is slightly different than the person you're trying to support, either as an investor or even as a founder. They have to be aligned, and so in the energy, the focus, and the USP, you know, how unique is this idea that they're trying to support? So those factors will be will be very decisive as to, well, is this somebody I want to support or not.
Do you look to see if they enjoy what they're working on as well? Like you mentioned before about passion.
The passion, yes.
Do you
yes,
really look at that?
energy.
How important is that, do you think?
Absolutely, because if you don't have the passion, you hit a little bit as Josh suggested. You make a lot of mistakes at the beginning, and you just need to continue going, and you need to not give up. And I was going to mention this at the end, but there are 5 P's that I usually go with, and that is so in the 5 P's is the people. So if it's not just one person, it's usually not just one person. So you've got like a bunch of ideas that people have that they want to put forward. Then you have the product. You know, is it something that's viable? Is it something that's unique that you think you can support? Then you have the timing, perfect timing.
Yeah.
It's never going to be perfect, but you have to be a little bit lucky with the timing, because if you, for example, we were listing I didn't mention, but I'm from Sweden. My dad's German, my mom's Swedish, and I've been living here 22 years, so married to a Scouser, so big mix.
That is a right
And
mix.
yes. And so in Sweden, we're trying to list this company, and just as we're about to list Telia, which is the equivalent to Max Telecom, their shares dumped, and they were a competitor. So we're like, well, we can't do this now. So we had to pull out of it very quickly. And that had, and to this day, Bredbandsbolaget is still a private, very successful business, because we decided to make that decision at the very last minute. So you have the product, and then you have plenty of cash. So you run out of money very, very fast. And one of the options and questions that you asked me is like, you know, can you get a loan to support a business? Well, not usually. Banks don't really like to give money to somebody who doesn't really have traction yet. And then you have to have, the last P is patience and persistence, because it takes a lot longer to get it over, to become operational. You know, you can have an idea and you get funding, and you can continue funding, but eventually you want to be making a profit. And to flip that around to actually be making a profit can take a year. It can, if you're very lucky, it can be, you know, months, but typically it takes a while. And then you have to have the patience and persistence to keep on going.
So we talked a little bit about green flags. Now what about red flags, especially from a first-time founder? You know, we've got a lot of people in the room that could be coming up with their first idea. So when they first get in front of an investor, what is some of the red flags that you have seen previously with them?
When the regulator comes knocking on your door, we think you're a collective investment scheme. No, we're not. And then you sit in front of the FSA, the FSC at that time, and you're sitting on your hands because you're shaking. You're like trying to explain your business model to these, and they actually sit above you. So you're like looking up to them and saying, no, you know, we're going to make this work. You know, we've just got our bank account, we've got a gaming license, you know, we're lottery betting. No, collective. So eventually we won the argument, and then I saw the same people at a function at Appleby later on, and I was holding a glass of wine, my hands started shaking, because you know that feeling, oh my gosh, they almost like killed the whole product, the whole idea, because the regulators weren't happy. So regulators are definitely red flag.
Okay, so now kind of moving on to the stage after you've come up with a problem that maybe you've got some domain knowledge within, maybe it's something you care about deeply, or maybe it's something else entirely. The next stage is looking at the users. So there's a bit of an analogy that people use called the painkiller versus the vitamin. Don, could you explain a little bit about that analogy?
Yeah, I think engineers like to build things that are very technically shiny, but maybe commercially optional. I think this is essentially the difference between vitamin and a cure. Pain is the purest form of clarity. If you have a set of users that you can work with extremely honest, painful issues, you can literally just build a product around them and then ship the thing, and it will work. It will absolutely scale, not just in the local domain, but there will be many other users who will also have this same type of pain. So I think that's largely it, rather than, you know, getting theatrical about it. It's just pain and just shipping something that somebody wants, because that's kind of what we did. We shipped something for nobody, and we pivoted and floundered around, and then eventually ran out of money. So that's what I'm doing in the future, and at present is building around real people with real problems. People are close to you, ideally within your network, that you can literally go to their front door, watch them have pain, and then just go home and solve the problem.
So Josh, I'm going to pick on you now, some of our shared accelerator experience. So can you remember a time where you've maybe built a little bit of a vitamin or been in that situation before, and explain a little bit about that?
I think if as a founder, you obviously drink your own Gatorade, so you think whatever you're building is the best thing since sliced bread. And often you come into a corner where you're like, okay, this is something I think is a problem. Find somebody who you know will fit that criteria and go, is this a problem? Yes. Okay, cool. Do you have someone else like this? Yes, 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 yes. Great. But then, after you've spent like, let's say 10, 20, 30, however many hours or money building that, you then just take like 2 minutes just to look above your shoulder around and you're like, this is not so good. Because you realize it's not a global scalable problem and you're trying to fit a problem to fit specific people that you're going after. So for example, if you say to your dog, do you want a new dog bowl with automatic food? Obviously it's going to want that and it's going to be a pain, right? But does everybody want that? I don't know the supply chain of dog food, but that's really something you should be carefully looking at. Whereas if you go to somebody like, what are your problems in a specific domain, and then some come through and you start to get primary feedback and research, especially in like this day and age where community is so important, they will tell you exactly what they want and you should build exactly what they ask you to build. And then if they like it, great, they'll tell their friends. But if they don't, they will very quickly tell you and you should listen to them.
So Jonny, I think you've got quite an interesting principle of this. You taught your founders a lot about the first 50 principle. Could you explain a little bit about what an ICP is and also the relation to your first 50 principle?
Yeah, so you're looking at obviously the ideal customer profile or the right persona obviously that you're looking for. And I guess probably just going one step back from what Josh was saying, just want to say that's the opportunity if you're starting a business right now in terms of vibe coding and all of this sort of stuff. That's not the complete answer, by the way, because there's still security issues or everything. And obviously you've still got to actually build a business. But if you want to get to validation quicker, scrape Reddit for common issues, look on exploding topics, Google Trends, find something people are talking about. You can get a MVP built really quickly, and then you can validate that by going quicker, by actually finding potentially your first 50 users. Now, I developed this method from community building over the years, and it's kind of trying to find your first 50. And that really is just 50 people who care deeply enough to jump on a phone call with you or fill in a survey properly. That isn't just like, we'll give you a free £10 Amazon voucher if you fill in the survey. It's like you go, yeah, whatever, A, B, C, whatever. But if you can find your first 50 and get real buy-in, pick up the phone, ask them deep questions about their life, how, what their problems are right now, how potentially your solution, fits in with that, what they would pay for it, potentially how they would promote it, how would they like to be marketed to. You can get all of this really deep kind of like feedback and get this market validation that what you're about to put into the market will actually fit. And obviously if they're the right people, then other people will potentially want to buy that as well. And if you really build strong relationships with those first 50, this is why don't rush any of this stuff in a pre-seed startup. If you've really built into a relationship, because nobody bothers picking up the phone anymore. But if I've chatted with Massimo and we've really, spent half an hour, 40 minutes and really connected, and he feels almost like he's bought into my product, he feels really almost like he's a customer already, he's then going to potentially tell 5 of his friends or network about the fact that I exist. And maybe then we'll share it on social and all this. So if you get 50 people right, if they all tell 5 people, you've then got 250 potential first customers. They tell 10 people, there's 500. Then they're your biggest advocates. And that's when you can get your cost per acquisition down, which is something which is really important to think about CPA, because if you're a fintech, it's crazy levels. But if you're getting word of mouth marketing, you believe it a lot more, but it's obviously a lot lower. You're going to build these deeper relationships over time, so they'll stick with you, so lifetime value increases. Churn obviously reduces, and obviously engagement is going to go up. And the nice thing about really putting that effort into the first 50 is when you've got your version 2 out there, or your next iteration, or your whatever, it's not just these faceless relationships where you've moved super fast and you've done that. Building a community or customer relationships or a product, it's just about really building those relationships early on. Don't rush it, but get 50 high quality people as well. And I would also probably say in there as well, don't be afraid to ask them as well. Be quite targeted about who you go after as well. So maybe have a look on LinkedIn, maybe find 5 or 10 people who are potentially in similar areas. Maybe a few people who've got media connections who might be able to introduce people for you as well. Almost like build up that while you haven't got much money, you can be quite agile and quite smart the way you think about it. But get 50 people to buy into what you're building early on, and honestly the results and the rewards will speak for themselves.
I think it's quite interesting to hear a lot of founders talk, maybe at the start with the first idea and go, well, you know, my product is for everyone. So in terms of a first-time founder, how specific should they be with their first kind of users?
You were about to say something?
Yeah, no, I mean, it sort of works the same way, but just to add to what you're saying, like, that sounds super easy, right? But to get to that point, oh my god, there is a lot of pain. Like, there are a lot of people skip that point of really finding the quality of the people to speak to.
Yeah.
And I think, like, that's the biggest problem where a lot of people fail. It's like, what do you say?
Well, I was just going to say, that's the problem, unfortunately, we now find ourselves in nowadays, is that someone messages you on LinkedIn, instantly your guard goes up. Oh no, they're trying to sell me something, because you know what it's like. Oh, is somebody trying to DM me? Oh, this must be a sales call. So even just to find those first 50, you've got to do it. But that's why, you know, fortune favours the bold and the brave. What I'm saying is, put yourself out there. You know, by the way, Elon Musk is not the poster boy for us all over this conversation, but we would all be worth hundreds of millions or whatever if it was easy. But you've got to put the hard yards out, you know, grab the calls, meet them where they're at, grab the coffee, find out who they are, do some due diligence on them, put yourself out there.
I think just finding just finding where they live and breathe and spend all their time in the first place is the biggest thing. Because when you find one of them, like you said, you'll find more and more and more and more and more and more. And let's say you want to sell beer to somebody, right? You go to a pub because there's going to be people who drink the beer. It's the same for every other target market you're trying to go after. Find exactly where they live, they breathe, where they spend all their time. And all the problems will just unravel, and you'll be able to ask them anything and everything, and they'll tell you.
And if you can, do it in person, because there's nothing like shaking hands, speaking to a person, softer skills, board minutes, meetings that I have. I try to have them in person as much as possible, because making tough decisions or getting that sale doesn't work so easily online, even if you know the person.
You can really tell how someone feels in person, can't you?
Absolutely, and that goes for sales. That goes for also the market that you're trying to target. If your target market is London or Europe, you need to be there.
Yeah.
You know, we have this issue with Ireland as a whole. You know, we need to be pushing the Ireland, the Biosphere, and everything else to England, so that they're aware that we're here. Because if we're not there trying to sell, you know, who we are and what we do on this island, that they'll just walk right over us. So you know, do it in person as much as possible.
Well, yeah, like I think a startup, a lot of people focus too much on locality, and that kind of becomes a big problem. I think always you should be thinking about global. Like, how do we expand this? How portable is this product? Because if, like you said about governance, and you end up in front of
domain which you're considering, but if you can bring those kind of people down to meet you, you know, have a few beers, you know, just put 100 quid behind the bar or something, and grab all of that feedback and data, especially once people have had a beer or two as well. They actually give you honest feedback. Maybe once they've had 7 or 8 beers, like, you know, this is
It might turn into a therapy session very fast.
It will.
If you've got some other founders in the room.
That's when you've got an exit. You know, you've earned it then as well. You know that you've gone through these sessions.
There is another way to force honesty. I think, like, you can have 50 users, but there's a distinction between 50 high-paying users that expect a quality product for what they're getting, versus 50 low-paid users you paid $1 for and they don't even remember your app exists and sits on the phone. So I think it's important, like, there's an equilibrium of your first price for your first product. If you have 50 users paying $200 a month, they will absolutely cry to you when there's a problem. And then you don't need to fly them everywhere and meet them door to door and all of those things. You can actually force them with anger because they're paying for a product that they expect. So that's something to, like, optimize for. Your first pricing for your app, you can underprice it entirely. Nobody will care. Nobody will even send a review on the App Store, and you won't know anything about your product.
And the final thing to sip on top of that is there is no greater mechanism early on than a referral scheme or an affiliate scheme where it's 30% commission or something. If you get your first 50 users, right, and they care and they're paying premium or whatever, they'll be the ones who are your net promoters. They'll share, they'll get it, and it's, you know what it's like. You get passionate when you're sharing your favourite restaurant or bar or whatever. Say this, and they can turn that into a mini empire for themselves if they introduce 10, 20, 30 people on recurring revenue. So just get the core right. Don't rush things, otherwise, you know, it's hard to scale back in when you go on 100 mile an hour.
And make sure that the product, if you're using affiliates, and we did that for a company that sadly failed. And the reason it failed is we were using affiliates to push a product that wasn't quite ready. We'd run out of money. We're promising the affiliates the world, And they sold, and we were turning around $1 million a month, you know, doing really, really well. It dropped to 20,000 within a month. 20,000 within 1 month, because affiliates suddenly started talking to each other, communicating. They're like, they're not ready. We're not delivering what they promised, and they left us. We had to, you know, lay off quite a few staff. So that was lesson number one. Make sure that when you are ready to launch, that the product is at least fit for its purpose when you're trying to sell it to affiliates, and then also using CPA. Sometimes that can also work better in the long run.
I think kind of from a first-time founder's point of view as well, you know, one of the early metrics which is very important is what's called K-factor. K-factor is how many times does a user refer your product. Genuine industry standard is about 1 to 3. So the important thing behind a K-factor for an early stage investor is to see that there really is virality in the product as well. Anything you'd like to add on that, Josh?
Yeah, definitely. Like when you work in the gaming space and specifically like online communities, if you reach that K factor of 1, where every one person is referring one friend, you're going to hit like virality very, very fast. And you definitely see that because they really genuinely care about it. That's when you know, definitely, when you go back to these keywords like product market fit, or, you know, your MVP's definitely been like definitely successful, is when you hit K factor of 1. Anything above that is a bonus. You just keep getting better and better and better and better. To go above 3, 4, 5, 6 is, you know, very difficult. But if you do, you know, you do it, you know, there's a potential that your user base and your community that you've built, you know, could bring you to like that unicorn stage at some point. You just got to find out then how to accelerate it even faster, because it gets to the point where when they're referring their friends, it's not about money, it's about like genuine love and passion for their platform. But then also, besides from money, what else are they getting in terms of referrals, right? So yeah, there's a whole Pandora's box in the gamification of how you can get people to refer other people.
Sort of momentum in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like when you go from your first 0 to 100 users, you might get a K factor of like 0.1, but then 100 to 1,000, you might get close to 1, and then it keeps going and going and going and going and going. Once it compounds, it's just like, you know, compounding interest in a bank, right? It just keeps going more and more and more and more and more and more and more, and then it's up to you to break it.
Yeah, I want to add, like, if you're building a Web3 product, there's like a lot of mechanics around that. Like, you kind of have to get very good at game theory in the beginning, because what you're building is missionaries. Like, you can get to like K10 if you're going to give everybody equity for like being slightly involved in the product. So like that's something that kind of the best part of Web3 is being able to like form capital very quickly, and it's about what you do with that capital and the governance that kind of like becomes a slight issue. But like in general, like build missionaries as early as possible. That's why I'd always like recommend to focus on like 5-10 people fully paying, very passionate about the product. They know the long-term vision, and they maybe might get some equity or tokens or something at the end, because those guys will always share your product if it's even remotely good.
So I think, you know, once we know who has the problem, the next question is, how do we reach more of them? What comes after that? You know, there's a phrase I often like, which is every startup has 3 to 5 organic growth levers, the way to grow and experiment its user base. So Josh, could you share a little bit about how growth experimentation helps SkinScanner grow into one of the fastest and most exciting communities in Discord in the world for CS2?
Awesome.
Counter-Strike.
Yeah, definitely. So when we were going from like September to December of last year, we had like a community of maybe 300. And has anybody used Discord here before? Anybody heard of that? Yeah, okay, perfect. There we go. You guys are all gamers. So, you know, we had like a Discord of 300-400 people, which is not many. And at that point, we were just figuring out, okay, how do we just grow the Discord? Because we realized very quickly that Counter-Strike users are also Discord users, because they're talking to their friends and playing lots of different like matches online as well, and they use primarily Discord to speak to each other. So it goes back to that whole ICP thing: where do they live, where do they breathe, where do they spend their time? So we thought, okay, Discord. Now, when it comes to growing communities, you kind of need to forget everything about money and revenue. You just have to think about like, okay, what do these guys want? What do the guys need? And how can I foster that environment? So for us, it was just doing loads of experiments to see what would make them happier. Okay, for us, it was ended up being putting on more online tournaments. Okay, great, that sounds really simple. But did any of our competitors think that way? No, because they kept thinking about the cash scenario, and which is a very like immature, like gaming is a very immature market. So there's lots to be done there. Going back to game theory, going back to everything, but going back to this like growth side is, once you find exactly what that is, do more of it, 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 it'll just snowball. Like we went from 400 users to 22,000 users in Discord within 6 months, which is super fast growth, considering most average Discord servers sit around like, I think the average Discord server is like 70 people or something. And then Discord takes you seriously, and then it snowballs again and again and again and again. So just do what people love, and then automatically they're bought into whatever you're doing. And then after that, you can say, hey, what do you think about this? And then you have loads of those like missionaries and people talking about you and really understanding what you're doing and wanting to be involved. That's where you create affiliates and influencers, and you start to build your own network and your own family of core users that will just keep expanding.
So that from a consumer side, Don, what about for an infrastructure product? What does a growth engine look like when the product isn't consumer led?
Yeah, it's a good question actually. So as an infrastructure product, you will likely never hit virality. Like nobody will run around and say, your blockchain is this amazing, or your AI infra is that great. So for infrastructure, it's all about reliability, it's about trust, it's about validity really, and just perpetually being there. Likely your sales will not come from going on Twitter and somebody's like entirely shilling your thing. Likely it will be technical founders or technical buyers literally telling everyone about your product. Unfortunately, it's a slow game. It's actually more of a marathon than a sprint, and that's why I would say like you're probably not like generating revenue in the first year. You're probably thinking more in the next like 5 years or 7 years if you get your like loss mechanics right. So really, it's a long game. Like the comps are much higher, right? Because if you're building an inference engine and like a model serving platform, like your comps are anthropic, right? So like that's what you have to think about as well, is like, how do I get from there to there? What's the realistic comp that I will see if I want to go to a VC or something? And when do I like pull the trigger on that as well? So it is a finesse, like it's like a provenance game essentially.
So I think, again, coming back to the consumer side of things, so Jonny, your beer adventure app, you bootstrapped to 25,000 app downloads.
Yeah.
So bootstrap means that it's entirely outside, not from outside funding, it's entirely from the founder's own pocket. So with respect to the growth to 25,000 users, did you have any experimentation methodology in place to get to that number, or was it kind of something that happened by itself with the pull of the users?
I mean, wow, 25,000 would be great if it just happened. You know, it's like, wow, what's happened to Google Analytics? It's just, yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things that were at play there. I think the first thing, obviously, is the power of SEO. And by the way, SEO is still available now. It's just going through a few changes with Google. Unsure really what Google's going to do in the age of AI. That's a different story for another day. So we created so many pages, you know, parent, child categories, loads of different hierarchies, and anywhere you went traveling in the world, it would be like brewery tour, beer tour, whatever, you know, it would get people into a funnel, top of funnel, and drive people towards this. And for any product as well out there, even still now, whether you're on Insta, whether you're on Facebook, whatever, leverage other people's brand equity that exists already. So we used to do interview series with brewery owners, with you know, we interviewed the guy who did the Beavertown artwork and stuff like that. Anything that's a bit sexier than what we were doing, it was a bit like, let's see if we can leverage their brand equity and their audience as well to come over to us to discover what we're doing. Then we kind of embed big banners inside our native content, no adverts, just our own, so it made it look like it, so people are used to those. And that then sets up a mini funnel that drives people towards, you know, like what they do. So that's something we're doing for our new one actually now, is creating thousands of pages which are around different industries, people searching, you know, is accountancy at risk from AI? You know, drives people towards that. They find out about it, you know, check your industry, and then it goes through into that. So I think, yeah, leverage, you know, the brand equity of other people who are bigger than you right now. Of course, you know, if you give somebody a shout and they've got 5 million followers and you're on 100 followers, it's not really going to work. But maybe be a bit more aspirational. Look for people with 5,000 followers. Then if we do a shared post, then it goes up and up and up and up, and you both kind of grow together as well. So that was it. You know, we try not to turn on any page really, and you know, we're very proud of that as well.
Which stage to 25,000 did you find was the most tricky? Was it the 1,000 mark and then going to 10,000, or then going up from that?
Yeah, I think it always is, to be honest, mate. I think,
Yeah.
you know, once you, a bit like you were saying with K numbers and everything before, it's just getting the ball rolling really. And, you know, as a solo founder, I'm lucky I've got an amazing co-founder now, Beth. She's amazing, you know, she'll walk across broken glass and fire and all those analogies to get to where she needs to get to. But, you know, it's those early days, you know, when you're doing all the work at night, you're pushing it, and you're seeing, oh great, we've got 3 new followers on Instagram today, or this week, or whatever, you know. But once you start ticking over and people understand why you exist, you know, what you're trying to do in the world, how, you know, people can be helped, and also hopefully fairly exciting content, then, you know, it starts to gather momentum. It's the people who give up too early, and that's the problem. It's the human brain, you know, like sometimes you just want to bash yourself and go, just stick to the plan, you know, just stick to the plan, because it is lonely as a founder, and you'll find this as a pre-seed founder. You're doing everything yourself, you wear so many hats, but you just keep going, and you've got the belief, you keep learning, you learn, you know, any mistake, you think, I can do that better next time. Keep going forward, as long as you believe in that vision and you keep pushing, and you will start to see the metrics start to tick up.
It's not an overnight thing. Like, it's definitely not an overnight thing. When you see like these companies come out of nowhere, you think, well, let's say for example, Anthropic with Claude, for example, like, it's not like, it doesn't just happen like this. There are a lot of hours that you do not know about of where they've come from, what they've done before they even Claude existed, right? And those hours that you see, you know, only the founders really know how much hours they've put in and how much blood, sweat and tears they've done and how lonely that world is. So when they get to like, I don't know, 10,000 users or 25,000 downloads, like, it's a really, really big thing for those founders, and it's really personal, because only they really know how hard they've worked to get to that point, maybe their close family as well. So I think even if you're not venture backed, even if you haven't got any angel investors,